We are up to episode 3 of Dear Rach and Soph, and the day we're recording this is actually the day that we have posted the first episode of this podcast. So we're
Yay, so
yeah,
exciting.
it is very exciting. It's out in the world, and here we are. We don't yet have questions, Rach, from anyone, and I should say hello, Rach, in
Hi,
person.
so
We don't have questions yet because we've only just launched, but we're hoping to receive questions from writers or from readers, just about anything really. We'll talk about anything, but I would like to know how your touring went because you have been running around the country.
Yes, I was just gonna say before that, we're not scary too. So, we'll be very kind if you are ask
And you can be
questions.
anonymous. People can send the question in with a name and
Anonymous.
we'll get to
So
read it.
we would love to answer any of your questions regarding books and writing or general life even, because we'll give that a shot.
Yeah.
Um, so how well, I got back from tour a couple of days ago, and it feels like life has just been crazy busy since, just catching up on all the stuff, and just being around again. And then yesterday we had Perth Writers Festival this weekend when we're recording this. I had an event yesterday, so I went to the city for that. Haven't stayed around for everything else, and I'm feeling a bit jealous about that when I see everyone else's, photos and stuff online. But I just felt that I needed to be at home for a little bit for me and for my family and for my dog who's on the floor here. So yeah, it was fabulous. Met so many readers, I think some new and some, reconnecting on the book tour for the other Bridget. But yeah, it's pretty exhausting. I don't know how people like rock stars and stuff like Taylor Swift. Oh my goodness, because obviously while we're recording this, it's still, I mean, Taylor Swift Central and Sydney
Yeah.
this weekend. you know,
Absolutely.
and like how on earth do they do it? Like, I just don't know. So
I
how are you
think
anyway?
I think it helps that they have, people to do all the life stuff for them, the cooking, the cleaning, the washing,
True. Yeah.
the child minding if they have children. But yeah, because I interview a lot of music performers in
Yes.
hobby life, for Southern country music, I do sometimes ask about performance, and there are processes of gearing up and winding down, but they do take a while. It is hard to do back to back to back, even for someone who's not Taylor Swift.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about the gearing up and gearing. I should have to listen to one of those where someone's talking about it, because it is the thing. Like, it's quite different from your, usual kind of life as an author.
Mm.
Obviously, we're often, at home doing our stuff without many other people around. And then you're suddenly seeing, so many people all the time,
Yeah.
which is great, but it's very different. So I think it kind of it can be draining. Like, it's enjoyable but draining. So I'd love to hear what they do to sort of,
Well, I guess actually
no.
I do it teaching yoga, which I've just started
Yeah.
doing again after a COVID enforced break because I lost the space. Well, I immediately stopped teaching my one class a week that I was doing because of the pandemic, and then the
Yeah.
space went, and so I've only just started teaching again. But I have it's not even like I can go at step XYZ. It's more that I think, okay, this is coming. I sort of make a decision that I'm
Mhm.
entering a particular energetic space, and
Yep, yep.
certainly practicing yoga for so many years helps me get into that space.
I can
So it's
imagine.
like I'm in an energetic space, and then after it's over, it's almost like I just need to not think about what's just happened. I need to completely
Yeah.
connect it from layers in my mind and then re-enter the world I'm in.
That makes sense. I feel like I'm kind of in some ways, the last 2 weeks, just did that really happen? Like, now I'm back to my normal everyday life. But I have had quite, apart from Perth Writers Festival, I've had quite a, easy, low key weekend. So that's been nice. Yeah. What have you been up to lately?
I've been working on the copy edit of my novel before we leave your event, so I'm interested because
Okay.
you do a lot of different type of events, and
Yeah.
you came back and did a festival event. So I'm wondering if for you it's a different mindset or different energy set to do a festival, to enter that space, because that's not a space that's
Yeah.
for you. You know what I mean? The other events have been about you and your book.
Yes. Yeah. That's a really interesting question. And I think it is quite different. As you said, obviously all the other events, I'm specifically kind of talking about promoting the other Bridget, and everyone's come. Like, I haven't in any of all the tour events, I've done no events. I've interviewed by people, other authors, but I've done no events where it's been like a joint thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, obviously Perth Writers Festival, I had Natasha Lester, Sasha Wasley, and Amal Ahmad, who were the other panelists. So it's quite a different thing. Like, it's definitely not, I feel like when you're talking about your own book, it's very much, in some ways it's harder. It's like, it's promo, promo, promo. You know, nobody wants to be pushing their own stuff on people. But when you're doing a panel, like, you're more talking about the writing life and publishing and books kind of in general. So it's quite, I feel like it is quite different. And then you've got, of course, the dynamics of the people in the panel. So everyone kind of brings a different energy and gives something different. And then there's the interviewer. So yeah, it felt quite different. Like, I didn't, even though it's been, sounds tacked on at the end of my tour in some ways, that was just timing, and it does feel quite different to be at a sort of a writers' festival where you're celebrating or talking about writing in general, as opposed to a library or a bar where you're promoting specifically your own book.
Yeah, so I think therefore you are doing that energy management perhaps instinctually.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I am in the middle of copy editing Art Hour at the Duchess Hotel, or reviewing the copy edit rather, and you've looked me through this process multiple times. I am not a fan of track changes. I missed the day when I was an editor originally and things were done on paper.
You like that better?
I do like paper, just I think partly because I'm on a Mac, and Microsoft Word track changes on a Mac does not behave super well.
I agree, because I do the same. I do my copy edits on a Mac too, and sometimes when I get to even the proof page stage, like of checking I'll borrow like my son's normal computer, whatever instead, and just go through on that. But it's interesting because I've had a change of publisher, which we've spoken about a little bit recently, and so you're at copy edit stage, and I have never done that on paper, but with Harper, we never did the proof at all on paper. Like, I could print it out myself if I wanted, but it was, whereas Penguin sends the pages and in the post, and it's quite different. I do think reading on paper is good for some things, but yeah, I've never done a copy edit on paper. That's always been in track changes, so that's interesting.
Well, the copy edits, because they used to be done in pencil, and therefore you just erase. Actually, for me as an author, it's not ever happened on paper. This is me as an editor. If the author didn't want to take in the change, they would just erase it. So then the changes would have to be taken in by the typesetter.
I think it must be such a big work, like a job to do for them.
So now it's all automatic, and the authors are effectively acting as the typesetters, because you're accepting rejecting the change. And I always proofread books on paper, because I do think the eye picks up things differently in 3 dimensions.
Definitely, I find, and also I don't know if it's different stages of the editing or different stages of the writing, but when I print off my book, say if I print it off, I often print it off its copy stage, even though that's me kind of thing. Often after I've done the stuff that they want me to do or whatever, and then you read it so differently. Like, if I read it on the screen, I think, oh, that's not bad. If I read it on the page, I think, oh my gosh, that sentence is so clunky. This writing is so pedestrian. Like, it's bizarre how different it is.
Well, I think you're also more likely to pick up repetitions of words or phrases on the page. It's just, and as I'm fond of saying to people, these books will be printed. So I think it's reasonable that we actually look at the page proofs on print. The page can be recycled if we're talking about an environmental.
Yes.
But it's good to see it in the form in which readers will mostly read it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Never thought about that.
So it's, luckily for me, this edit is not taxing. It's not a heavy edit. It's what in the industry we may call a light edit.
Yes, the best edits.
But it's still
I'm hoping for that for my next book, which will be coming soon, the edits.
I'm quite sure you will get a light edit, but I always have that irritation at myself that I've missed something when it's an inconsistency, when the editor's saying, oh, but didn't that person have X over on this page and now it's Y on this page? I'm like, okay, yes, I should have known that, but I didn't.
I never know those sort of things. Like, I need to keep a list better of, like, who has certain eye colors and even name changes. That's terrible.
Oh yes, I've done that. I liked a different name.
Like, wasn't his sister called Sally and now his sister's called Mary? You know what?
Yeah, so
I don't care.
I did that enough times that I actually now keep a detailed list of characters, even if they're really
very sensible. That's very sensible, and I do try to do that too. Actually, I have a notebook when I start every book now, and well, I've been doing that for quite a few years, but now I'm trying to, like, I just started literally the one for the next book, and in it I put down, I'm starting it's sort of like I don't know, it's not an outline, but what I do is I have certain things I have to know now. One of them, one page is for minor characters. And so I then have to, I've written down the other characters so far that I know about, and as any come, I will put them in there because yes. So I'm a slow learner. It's taken a while for things like that, but now I do as well.
So you got an actual notebook?
Yes, this one is my new one. Usually I make them, I did a TikTok actually, the other day showing that I was starting this, but I've got a pile of like the last few books, and I usually make the front page look a bit nice depending on what's the book's about, but I haven't done that. And then I worked out a couple of books ago that there were certain things I was thinking about before each book. So like I think about, if I'm writing a romance particularly, which I think what are the tropes in the are there themes? Do I know a tagline yet? So that all kind of goes on the first page, and then I write a bit about both main characters and said things like minor characters, things like what they need to talk about, so that then I can, if things are going slow, and I think, oh, well, maybe they can talk about, his parents' divorce or something, So yeah, I have little notebooks, yeah.
Because TikTok doesn't necessarily show videos in the order in which they're released. I actually haven't seen that.
Yeah,
Yours,
yeah.
Because it might decide to show me something from 3 months ago.
Oh, I know. Who has a mind of its own in TikTok? Hey.
So today, Rach, I thought we could talk about possibly a big topic, or maybe it's a simple topic, which is why we write and why we're not doing something else, why it's not, songwriting or painting or something like that, why we're writing stories. So why don't you go first?
Oh, I was going to say, you go first.
All right, I can go first. I'll go first.
Well, you go first. You go first this time.
Since since I raised yoga teaching, I actually do think of writing fiction as an extension of that. So for me, I've been practicing yoga for so many years now and been teaching for a long time as well. And it is so much the bedrock of my life and who I am, that I see the world very much in terms of the practice. So every day is within the context of that practice, and it's not necessarily conscious thought. It's more just about, how am I in the world? My teacher talks about being yoga, not doing yoga. And so if we think about yoga as a practice of connection with body, mind, breath, but also with other people, connecting through time, it's 6,000 to 7,000 years old as a practice. So I do see myself in the context. I'm not seeing myself in the context of that, but I'm aware that I exist in the context of that. And I think storytelling is part of that. And when I teach a class, I always have a beginning, middle, and end. There is an arc to it. There's always a point I want to reach, and I lead people to that. I always want students to feel better at the end of the class than they did at the start. And I want to take them on a journey through that. And I want to be entertaining while I'm doing it, because I'd like them to enjoy it. So I think all of that is also writing a novel. It's one of the reader. I want the reader to feel better at the end than they did at the start, or at least to feel that they've had an experience. I want there to be a beginning, middle, and end. And within that, within sequencing a yoga class or a practice, there's pose and counterpose. So I think it's the same kind of thing with writing a novel. Each chapter is like pose and counterpose. So it's like, right, that's discreetly.
I love that.
That's discreetly there. And it's also an extension of the work I've been doing in Australian country music for 12 years now, which is born out of a real interest in documenting our national storytelling in song to the extent that I can as an individual who's doing it as a hobby. Country music is the one genre I've identified where women and men are telling their stories in equal measure, and it's across a range of ages. So you can I've interviewed kids, basically. People who are in their mid-teens who are releasing songs, through to people who are much, much older than that. Have stories to tell. And in any other genre of music, they wouldn't get to tell those stories, because it's not a genre that's there for them. And it's because country music is about storytelling. So that door's open. So I think
I love country music too, I think.
What was that, sorry?
I think I love country music the best probably too, and it's because of, not as much as you, but like, I do think it's because of the stories.
So I think it's therefore for me, telling stories in the form of novels feels like, well, I want to connect with that audience the same way those performers do. They want to tell stories to someone stories are so fundamental to who we are as humans.
Mm.
I did not think I was going to write fiction ever. And
Yeah. Wow.
I did write when I was a child. I used to make up stories and write little things, and then just thought, oh no, I don't have anything to say. And because I was very seriously ill 12 years ago and almost died, it's not like I had some kind of conversion of, oh yes, well now I'm going to write a novel. It was
Yeah.
more that I think the worst thing I could have imagined happening to me happened, and I was not scared anymore
Yeah.
of
So
what.
is that when you started to write fiction?
No, that's when I started to write about country music. And
Oh,
so, yeah, so I think because I couldn't teach yoga,
yeah.
I couldn't do anything for months. And so I realized that teaching had been a creative practice and I needed
Yeah.
to do something creatively. And so years before, I'd lived in Vancouver, BC, and I'd worked in a street press magazine. I'd interviewed musicians, I'd written reviews. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll do that again and about country music because I've been in a country music band.
Yeah.
And
What
so
do you play or sing? Do you play or sing?
both. Well, in that band, I sang, danced, and played percussion. I play guitar and piano, but it was more just. Well, I firmly believe that if I had not been writing about country music, I wouldn't be able to write fiction. I think that discipline of writing to an audience,
Yeah, yeah.
writing about storytellers, the practice of just doing it and trying to hone the message, and also trying to write about something that's difficult to convey, which is the experience of listening to music. I don't want to write it from a technical point of view. I don't want to go into the major and minor keys and all that sort of stuff. I want to write about what it's like as a
Experience.
listener. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, what am I feeling? What
yeah.
that
Emotion
song?
side of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
rather. Yeah.
So all that was preparation, I think, to write fiction. And then at a certain point, I just thought, oh, okay, well, maybe now's the time.
So really, so that's how. So you wrote some like blogs and articles and things like that for country music.
Yeah.
You're always, because obviously before you were sick, you're an agent. Is that right?
I wasn't at the time I was sick, yeah. And I'd been an editor before that.
So you were in the publishing, like the world of publishing, and
Yeah.
did you represent fiction and nonfiction?
Yes, and children's. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you kind of never thought about writing a book before then?
No, I think working in publishing was even more turned me against the idea of doing it. I
Yeah,
just
wow.
thought, oh no. But then at a certain point, there was certain types of fiction I was looking for as an agent that I was not finding, and it was a lot of robust commercial women's fiction.
What you kind of started to write instead.
Well, I think I remember thinking to myself, if I don't see the sorts of books that I'm looking for, then maybe I should give it a crack. Maybe I should basically test out the theory.
Was Farewell your first book that you wrote? Like
no, I'd written a few romance novels before that.
Oh, that's right. We said that. And so you wrote, and did you also write, am I making this up? Did you write like home and away books or something?
Yeah, I did. So the first two Sophie Green novels are official home and away. One was an adaptation of a screenplay and one was a story extension. And because I love home and away, I was just
I used to always love to watch it too.
So that was actually, and those two immediately preceded Farewell.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So interesting. No, and so then how did you get it published?
Well, it was an internal job in that I had written those two home and away novels as part of my job. And the publisher I had for those liked a particular sort of story, and I just went to her and said, oh, I have an idea. It was actually submitted not with my name on it, and only 3 people knew it was me. So the 3 people who knew it was me.
I suppose like you don't want anyone to be like, oh, well, she only got that. So that's good. That's safeguarding yourself kind of thing, isn't it?
And also I wanted my colleagues to feel they could say no if it wasn't good. And I didn't want them to know it was me and then feel like, oh my God, like I've got to look at her in the corridor. So I went on in under a completely different name, a name that I've never used again. It was just a fake name for the purposes of that meeting.
So funny.
And then it got through, and then I had to finish writing it.
That's hilarious. Did you ever consider submitting to a different publisher that wasn't your own, like you were working with?
No, I think because I'd had the conversation with the publisher there, it wasn't something I could take elsewhere.
Yeah. So do you have an agent yourself, or because you were an agent?
No, I do. I do have one. Just to
we should probably talk about agents one time.
Yeah.
About that, but yeah.
That's not a bad idea at all. But I do have one just because it's great to have someone to talk to about ideas.
Yeah,
so true. Often it'll just be a conversation of, oh, I have all these different ideas,
Which one do you think best, or?
and then sometimes it's just it is just easier because I'm working in the place where I'm published to have that separation.
Yeah, that's true as well. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting.
So how did you start writing?
Well, totally different to you. So I never dreamed of being a writer or a published author or anything in the publishing books world. I just wanted to be a primary school teacher. And then I feel like I should say this reasonably quickly because I think a lot of people have heard this story. And then maybe is
There may
that
be someone who has not, so you don't have
true?
to talk
That's
quickly at
true.
all.
So I wasn't I wasn't a huge reader in high school. I did reasonably well in high school English and stuff, but I barely read any books because I just thought books were boring. And the ones that they wanted you to read, like Far from the Madding Crowd and all these books I was just so bored with. And so I read, basically I got through high school English reading the York Notes or the Cliff Notes, that told you all the things, they told you the themes, they told you the characters. I figured, why would anyone actually read the book when you could read them instead? I figure all that's now on the internet. But anyway, I think one of the other reasons is because I was obsessed with a boy all through high school. Probably obsessed is a good word. I was more of a stalker than anything else. Like, who was lucky that there was no Facebook or Instagram or any of that sort of stuff. So basically, I spent a lot of my high school years crushing on this guy, and that took a lot of energy and time away. So I didn't have time to read, right? But when we broke up at the end of year 12, and I accidentally dumped him because he said something one day that I wasn't 100% happy with. And I said, don't think this is working out, hoping he'd say, no, Rach, you're the love of my life, don't leave me. But he said, yeah, I think you're right. So I accidentally dumped him, and I was totally heartbroken. Like, you can't, like, only I think at that age that you can be. I thought my life was over, and so many tissues. And for some strange reason, then, as I said, I was due to start primary school teaching, and I'd never thought about writing a book. I did read in primary school, I should say. Like, I was a pretty big reader. I loved, as a young child, I loved like all the Famous Five, and we're younger than that, Edith Blyton's Fire with the Faraway Tree, and my mum read Beatrix Potter. Like, so books were around, and I loved all Babysitters Club books and all that. But I definitely fell away from reading in high school. So it was weird, but I decided to write this book, and it was me and this boy. It was everything we ever said to each other. It was the worst book anyone has ever heard of. Honestly, I don't even know if you can call it a book, because the characters were, even though they were based on real people, they were definitely cardboard cutouts, and it was so boring. Nothing happened. And then I even knew that I thought then you can't end a book by accidentally dumping someone. So I gave him a horrific disease and I killed him off. And this is what I think. There's two things happened with this. I always say that I've seen two types of writers in my time of trying to write since I was about 17, 18. And one is those that have always had somewhere inside them an inkling to write, or they've loved story, and that's probably you, I guess. It's just been there waiting to come out. Sounds like all those years.
Possibly, yeah. Except that
Yeah.
we're very, very dormant.
Possibly. And then, or maybe you have this one too. The other is people who come to write. No, maybe this is you too, actually. I was going to say the other one is people who come to write because it's a kind of therapy. And I often feel it's something that's happened in their life. So for you, maybe that was, that near-death experience almost kind of thing. And I hear often when people lose someone close to them, or they do go through something like you obviously did, that then, it's sort of a wake-up call, and they suddenly start doing writing, either because, that dormant thing is there, and they suddenly think, well, now, what am I waiting for? Or they launch into writing as a form of therapy, that while they're, working through the feelings that they get from going through something really life-changing. And so I do think I came to it through therapy. And it really helped me work through those feelings. But in writing that, I just caught the bug. I also started reading around the same time and remembered, I guess, what I loved about reading years and years ago. But I loved that I could, sit down at the keyboard and make characters do what I wanted them to do, whereas in real life, and now I know that's not really the case. Like, characters have to be real people to an extent, and you can't force them to do things that are out of character. Otherwise the story is going to, not feel real. It's going to feel contrived, or, it's just going to totally fall flat or whatever. But I didn't realize that back then. And I just loved the experience of sitting down and creating. So that is when I decided, the summer holidays from finishing year 12 and starting uni, I was supposed to be a primary school teacher, that I wanted to be a writer instead. And so then, and I think it was because, we're doing this podcast now, right? So anyone can listen to us and hear about us as authors. We've both got Instagram. We're both on TikTok. We're trying our hand
You are
there.
much more successful at TikTok than I am. I am in
know.
awe of your TikTok skills.
We're both on Facebook. We have websites. You can find us if you want to. And I think that was not something when I started to write in 1998 that was there. Like there was. I didn't know any authors. I didn't have access to any authors. I don't even know if publishers then had websites. Like it was just really the beginning of the internet kind of thing. And so to me, it was like, well, I want to be an author. What do I do? I guess I go to uni and learn how to be an author. Unfortunately, uni did not teach me how to be an author. It was a terrible degree. So it was 15 years from me deciding to write and attempting to write during that time different types of fiction, first literary fiction, and then I tried to write for Mills and Boon for a number of years, which I did get very, very close to, and that kind of led me down this path, or down the path of writing, because rural romance instead, so a bit slightly bigger than Mills and Boon, and for a different target audience and a different publisher and that. But I learned a lot trying to write romance. But yeah, 15 years it took me. Is that the answer to that question? I forgot what we're discussing now.
Yeah, but I think it's also shows that it's a long apprenticeship. It wasn't like suddenly, like I had an apprenticeship mainly writing about music.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't decide one day to write a novel without any prior, and I think, I guess, obviously you wrote about music, but you also, being an agent and having fiction authors, as you said, agents often, they edit a bit, they do brainstorming.
I did, yeah.
So you were thinking in the writing kind of realm already before you were that was training without being.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Training. You know what I mean?
It was but you did bury the lead, I think, with the boy you're obsessed with, because it sounded like it was one-sided, but then you revealed you broke up. So obviously.
Oh, yeah. No, so obsession pays off. I think it does sometimes. I think that it's a funny story actually about this guy, because I saw him recently, like last year. Was it last year or the year before now? Time's going so quickly. I'll tell you what the conversation was. But yeah, no. So I think as a writer, you do need to be a little bit obsessed. You need to, because there's a lot of times when you'll be knocked back pre-publication, post-publication, or you have to kind of really be obsessed about the work and obsessed about the book and the story, or why would you do this? Because there are a lot of times where people are saying, that horrible things about your work, or, and you've got to develop a tough skin. So I think my obsession with this boy sort of trained me for that. But yeah, I basically pestered for years, and then a miracle happened in year 12 and he asked me to the ball, and I think he only did that because he knew I'd definitely say yes, but nobody else would ever say yes because I'd kill them. But then we sort of started hanging out, and the lead up to that, and then we started going out, and so it was all very lovely, and both of us, I think, at the time would have said that we thought that was it, as you kind of do. And it's funny because he's on his second marriage now. And I saw him a couple of years ago at a cafe when I was with my friend Anthea Hodgson, who's also an author. And yeah, he came up to us and stuff, and he actually said, oh, sorry, I wasn't that great, or like I was a bit of a dick or whatever towards the end. And I was like, excuse me, I dumped you, remember? He's like, yeah, kind of did that because, of me. And then he said something like, oh, I reckon we probably would have made it work. Like, I think we, like...
That is such a cruel line, really.
It's so funny because I'm like, he's like, oh, maybe I wouldn't be divorced, and
Oh yeah, it's all your fault, Rachel. It's your fault that he's divorced because you didn't not accidentally dump him.
I accidentally dumped him. I know, so it was quite funny actually. But like, I don't know if I would. It's interesting, that whole parallel lives or sliding doors thing.
Yeah.
Like, that was very monumental in me starting writing. I cannot imagine that had we stayed together in another, like, I just don't know if maybe I would have. Maybe, a lot of people, when they have kids or whatever, they suddenly start writing, or so. Maybe something else would have led me there. But I honestly don't know. So yeah, I feel like I owe him a lot in a way because this has become, I mean, I've been writing 25 years or so, now, over half my life. Someone actually asked I want to ask you this question that someone asked me. So a reader at an event asked me the other day, like, how do they think writing, well, they did it in such a beautiful way, but how do they think writing has like impacted my life? And when I thought about it, I thought, well, in so many ways, it's had a financial impact because it's my job. It's also, I've met so many wonderful friends and different people through writing, readers and other writers, people like you, so people that I wouldn't probably never have come across if I wasn't doing this. But it's also challenged my thinking, and made me, write and research about issues or topics that I probably never would have thought deeply about had I not been writing about them. And so it's made me change my thinking on something. So yeah, what about you? How's writing impacted your life?
Well, I remember you saying, I think at the event I saw you at, about how you write because you can't not do it. And I never
Yeah.
thought I was that writer, but I think I must be, because in order to produce a book a
Oh,
year,
I
there
think so
has
while you're
to,
writing full time.
like,
Oh,
there
boy.
has there has to be something where I just can't let it go. So I think for me, the challenge is part of it, enjoying the challenge of trying to come up with a new story, new characters,
Yeah.
build that world, get better every time. I always hope to
Yeah.
be better every time. But
It's a bit addictive, do you reckon, as well?
it's, well, maybe I'm addicted to the pain, honestly, because it's sometimes I'm just sitting there like crying, and I'm thinking,
I know. Why are we doing this? I know. I think there could be, surely there's another easier job, or I could be teaching. And yes, that's painful in other ways, but and I'm not, shout out to all the teachers out there because I have been in there. I've got 3 kids, so I respect teachers and everything. My mum was a teacher too. But I do think, and I know they need their school holidays and stuff. But I think, geez, I watch these teachers and they say they're reading our books like on their summer holidays, and they're sitting by the pool in Bali in January or whatever, and I'm slogging away because I'm late on my deadline, and I'm thinking, geez, I could be having a job that gives me holidays. And what about you? Because I guess you get holidays from your work, but then you get holidays from your day job, but then are you ever really switched off from
no.
your other job?
No, and it's self-inflicted, because I also have the country music stuff that I
Yeah.
do. Where I keep saying to myself, "Oh, I'll only do this many interviews a week," and then it always blows
Something
out,
comes
because
up.
it's always interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
just before talking to you today, I interviewed an artist called Jen Myers, who just gave me the most beautiful answers about things,
Yeah.
about songwriting in particular, because she does a lot of songwriting teaching and a lot of co-writing, because there are all these songwriting camp, well, not all these songwriting camps, there are certain songwriting retreats and camps set up. And it made me think about book writing as well, and how those sorts of things could be run, where there's extraordinary songs come out of this. And because I'm in a position to talk to artists about
Yeah. Yeah.
going to the retreats and find out which songs are coming out of them, I know how valuable these retreats are,
Wow.
basically, to our national body of song. But she could
Yeah.
just articulate so beautifully why it was such a great thing to be in those places at those times, writing with other people,
I
and
was
what
gonna
would
say,
come out
is
of
it the
it.
other author, like, will the other artists that are around you sort of feeding your, yeah,
Yeah, but also just
motivation, creativity?
the sliding doors aspect of it, which is, she said, that song can only exist in that way because those two people are there together. She
Yeah.
said if one of those writers took that song and worked with someone else, it would not be the same
Yeah.
song.
Yeah. Do
And
you feel like that happens with like I often think, you know, sometimes I'll be writing and I think, oh, I could probably keep going for a little bit longer, but I'm kind of, either I've met my word count, but I've still got a few hours of the day, that I've set aside for my writing time or whatever. And I think, or this, anyway, I decide to finish for some reason. I could have kept going, or I could have tried to work out what was going, but I'm just not feeling it.
mm,
And then I always think that if I'd kept going that day, as opposed to starting again the next day, it could have taken the story in quite a different direction sometimes.
well, except I'd say what you've just described is you actually listening to yourself, and,
Yeah,
well, I'm not ready to go on today. And I'm a big believer in obeying the feeling. So there will be
yeah,
times when I will sit, if I'm writing at night, for example, and I will have said to myself, I'm only going to write for this amount of time.
yeah.
And then the flow is there, and I just think just go with it. But
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
other times where I'll write a certain amount. I think, you know what, the
I'm
gates
not
just
feeling
closed.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm very much a strong believer in the gut too. And that's why although I aim for 2,000 words a day, I've learnt that, not to beat myself up now if that doesn't necessarily happen, because just sometimes, yeah, I mean, so many people like keep going, just get it down, and that's fine for some people, but I've learned actually that most of the time that's not fine for me. Like,
Well, it's the work is probably not going to be what you want it to be. And if
yeah,
you've just got that forced thing of I must get to the 2,000 words, and then if you read back your work the next day, you might look at it and think, I can't use that. Therefore,
yeah,
I
yeah,
wasted my time and I would have
yeah.
been better off having a nap.
Yes, exactly. Always have a nap. That's good.
Got to
Fine.
power down. It's just that
Napping and walking are great ways to sort of fix a problem, a plot problem, I
yeah.
think.
I
Some
love walking, big fan
yeah,
of walking for problem solving, but also I only ever nap when I'm working on a manuscript.
not
I'm not a
interesting.
napper by nature, but it's,
I'm becoming more of a napper.
I think it's an intense energy output, and
Yeah,
it to be in that world. And it's like, okay, well, I think I'll just set the timer. It's usually only 20 minutes or something,
yeah, yeah,
but just I've got to completely switch off. If I go and listen to music or try to read something or do something
not
else,
necessarily, yeah.
got to
Um,
power down.
I just realized you asked like why we write, and obviously we've talked about, you know, how we got started.
Mm.
But is that a different, like, do you write? Why do you write? Like, I was thinking,
Well, not because it's easy.
no,
That way. I think
because we're insane.
yeah.
That's why.
I think the why is it is very much related to the yoga teaching thing, which is that
Yes.
I want to feel like there's that I'm putting something into the world that could brighten someone's day, could help them solve a problem, might just give them an experience and they've had fun and they walk away and never think about it again. But um, it's not an act of service. There is within yoga practice the idea of seva, which is service, and it's not that. It's not me thinking, oh, I've got to offer this to other people. It's more just if I could improve the world even a little bit, if I could improve someone's day even a little bit, I'd like to do that.
Yeah, I think mine's probably very similar. Hence why in my last book, The Other Bridge, I explored the power of like the joy of books and the power of healing in books and stuff. Because I think what I get from reading is that, happy sort of relax, escape from all my other woes, and it's just an amazing feeling to be lost in a book. And I
Yeah.
think really helps you relax and helps you, on different levels and stuff. So I think, yeah, probably that's part of why I do it. But also, again, yeah, that sounds very like virtuous and stuff. And I have to be honest, and probably, that's not necessarily why. Really deep down, I think I do it because I can't do anything else. But also, I think I do it. I do think it's kind of an addiction. And now I've just got, the more stories you have in your head, the more I don't know what I would do. Like, and I'm not even talking about jobs. Like, I could probably go out and get a job in retail because I've worked in retail before. Maybe I could even teach again if I did a little bit of retraining and stuff, whatever. But I still think I'm one of those people, like even when I had a job or when I had, young kids at home and stuff, I need to be creating in some way. Like, it sounds really weird, but I can't relax. Like, for like I'm just, there's too much kind of going on in my head. I think I kind of need to do it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, it totally makes sense. I think it's related to what you said about being obsessive. I am absolutely an obsessive person. Yoga has tempered it quite a bit,
Yeah, I
but
can imagine.
I've also just given into it. I used to think, oh, I should adjust. I shouldn't be like this. It's like, well, it's my nature,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Don't fight it.
don't fight it. And also it is what keeps me creating and producing. But I also have never thought of myself as a creative person, I have to say.
Same,
Yeah.
same, completely. Actually, even though I sort of said that, like, I have to do something.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe, maybe in another lifetime, say if I did marry that guy, right? I used to be very into craft, like art and craft when I was at school. I love sewing, and it was a lot of, but it was never like, yeah, I wouldn't say I don't think I've got an amazing imagination, and obviously you maybe,
I think I just like to make stuff. That's what I realized.
yeah,
Maybe you're the same. It's like
yeah, I think
make
maybe,
books or make
yeah.
stories.
Yeah. And then having that book and seeing it done, like I think I don't know if I said this when I was at the event I don't think I did, but I know I've said it at some stage because someone asked some sort of question. And to me, so I like running. I don't do it at the moment because of what's lying on the floor near me here. She's like too crazy to run, and she takes up, like, basically because of my dog, I'm walking her, and then I don't have time to also run, if that makes sense, in my
It does, because the dog walks can take a while.
everything of else going on. But I love running. And I liken writing to running in terms of the thought of running, or any type of exercise. Probably the thought of it is like, oh, I can't be bothered, so I don't want to do it. Like, I'd rather lie on the bed and read a book, or whatever, watch some TV. I'd rather do anything but do it. While I'm doing it is actually quite hard, and it's not like we're sitting there and it's just flowing out of our fingertips and it's all very lovely. It is hard, and it feels like you have to, for me, like, it feels like I have to force myself when I do that in writing sprints and stuff. But then afterwards, it feels so good to have done it,
Right.
the running and the writing, and to look back on what you've created and go, oh, so not always happy, but like, I've got something on the page I can work with, or sometimes it's like, wow, I like that scene, like so I think it's a lot like, yeah, it's kind of, and exercise can be addictive too, so I
Oh,
do.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I liken you likening, you're writing a lot to yoga, and I do sort of see, similarities between running and writing for me. And I guess everyone needs an outlet, something, it can be hard having that outlet be your job, though, I'll
Yeah,
admit.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
and I guess that's why you've got, like, even though you're still in the publishing world, you've got kind of two jobs. You've got, so one can, if one's annoying you, can lead into the other. Or if you're worried about one, you can think, well, at least I've still got,
Yeah, and I guess I think for me the country music is also an outlet. It's a
yeah.
completely different function. But I like to say that humans need to whack things. I
Mm.
do, and so I wonder whether writing is a form of intellectual whacking. It's like externalizing
I
things.
think it probably is, yeah. And I did notice a few years ago when I went through that really down sort of time, really full of doubt and anxiety, and
This is the Outback Secrets.
yeah,
Right?
around that. Well, I think that was the culmination, but it had been coming, a
Mhm.
while. I did notice that everything in my life is book related.
Right.
Like, so at the time, one of the things I did is I went and got a job in a bookshop to try and get out, but it was in books, and so I'm seeing I loved it, but there was books around me all the time. Like a lot of my friends, and I've got close friends who aren't writers, but the ones I talk to most of the time now are writing. We're all going through, like, so I like, and when I'm not writing or not doing jobs or whatever, I read a book because that's what I like to do. I was even like, I'm wearing book earrings, buy earrings that are books. If I went through, if I tried to do a puzzle, often the puzzle would like be a bookshop or something like that. I realized, so I think your country music is good because it's kind of something that's not in the writing book world. And that's why when I actually, as well as doing the bookshop, I stopped the bookshop and then started this. I went back, I did sewing classes. I loved sewing in high school. But I was very, very rusty. It had been 20 years kind of thing since I'd really sewn anything apart from like a hem or something like that. And so I went and I did sewing one morning a week, beginner classes, and then I went up to that, immediate, intermediate. And that was so good. And I don't do that now. I'm back on the sort of, because other things going on. I'm back on a 2 book a year, crazy,
Mhm.
at
That
the
is
moment.
extraordinary.
But I know now the signs, I think, if I need to back off and do something else, if that, so I do think, like, yeah, doing other things aside from writing and books is really important, um, to keep you sort of okay in the writing and books.
Yeah. Well, and I whack things by playing tennis.
Mm.
And so I do think that externalizing force is so useful, and that's why I often think a punching bag in a house can be quite
Yeah.
useful.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Actually,
it
we've
could
got
be
one in the
sewing.
garage.
It could
I
be like
I
then
got
I.
one for my boys during COVID lockdown, so I should get it out.
Oh, yeah. Well, there you go. You got the means right there. But also, yeah, sewing, making something with your hands. It's a way of just taking it out of the brain and into the world around us. Because I do think writing is really physical, and that's one of the
Yeah.
things that surprised me about it was how
Yeah.
much. And I think how much, as I'm writing a character's story, I will feel what they're feeling, and therefore
Yes.
that's an embodied experience that could make me tired. Hence the napping.
Yes. Yeah, it's really interesting. Also, another thing I like to do though that I don't do much of because I don't eat it then, but is cooking. So anything else that's like outside of the actual writing, but is kind of creating in some way, I think can be, helpful to me.
Did I see you make a marble banana bread today? Was
Oh
that
yeah, I did. So good. So good. It's a really good recipe. It's on my Facebook and Insta if anyone wants it. It's called marble banana bread, but it's basically chocolate banana bread and it's got chocolate cake and banana cake. It's kind of amazing. Very good. Luckily my oldest and youngest really like that because I like the act of cooking, but and I'm baking. I don't like cooking actually, like dinner and stuff that
Look, baking is chemistry, so it's
yeah,
different.
exactly. But I also, fresh out the oven things, I could just eat and eat and eat. So that's one of the reasons I don't cook as much. So I have to, if I choose things that my kids will eat, then that's useful.
I was thinking of something that you said a little while ago about not liking reading in high school.
Mm.
And I've heard that before from people who would later go on to become novelists. And I just think
I've never met
how
anyone.
how awful it is actually, though, that you love writing in primary school, and then the way that texts are taught, or even the choice of texts in high school, means that you fall away from reading, and if you haven't found a strand of things you want to read, possibly because you just so don't like what's being taught to you, that
Yeah,
all books are bad. That's it's awful. It's kind of a bit heartbreaking actually.
I agree. It's my bugbear. I think one of the reasons why I briefly liked English teaching because you can, make a difference by trying to tell people, show people that the books, yes, there's a place for learning, for studying texts that have been around a long time and stuff, but I don't know if necessarily the place is, in year 9 and 10 when
Mm.
especially now with so many other distractions and different things. We've got so many good books out there. And I'm not saying the books you read in high school aren't good, but they are dry. They're often not accessible to most adults, never
Yeah.
mind. They're accessible to people who really want to absorb that kind of literature and who are interested in it. But if you're not interested, it could only, be detrimental. And I do meet a lot of people, I'm sure you've had this, where they say, oh, I hadn't read a book, in 20 years. And then someone forced your book on me, or I picked your book up in a caravan park for some strange reason. I just felt compelled to read. And now I can't stop reading. I love being someone's gateway.
Gateway drug.
But I do think that often, you come out. So we used to own a supermarket in the Wheatbelt, and one of our employees, she was in her early 40s at the time, that 50 Shades of Grey came out. And whatever you say about books like 50 Shades of Grey or Twilight or some of the things that are on TikTok and stuff, no, Colin Hoover say, like, there's a lot of people like, disparaging these works and saying that they're not great literary content or whatever. But a lot of these books are what get people back into reading. So our employee at the time, she hadn't read anything since high school, and she said, oh, it's hard, it's boring or whatever. And then someone forced 50 Shades of Grey on her because they're like, oh, you'll like this, kind of thing. And she's like, oh my gosh, Rach, I read it all night. It was so easy to read. And that I've got a love hate with that sort of comment, because I'm thinking, yes, that's true, but there's so many books out there that are like, the majority of books are actually quite easy to read, and yet people come away from high school thinking
They're not, thinking they're turgid. I mean, if
yeah,
we're doing our jobs properly, they should be easy to read. When someone
yeah,
tells me one of my books is easy to read, like, that is the
the
ultimate
biggest
compliment.
honor. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Because it's, yes, they should be accessible to anyone. You should be able to open that first page and get right into the story and
Yeah.
feel comfortable, feel like the author's taking care of
Not
things.
feel like you need a dictionary to help you through it, or you're not, the worst thing I think about books sometimes is if they make the reader feel dumb. Like,
Yes.
books are a great place, as I said. They've expanded my mind, books I've read, books I've written myself and all that. But there's nothing worse than reading something that, makes you feel stupid.
Mhm.
And I think, that can turn people off too.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of those books that are inflicted on high school students in the
Yes.
name of literature and education. It's like, well, number one, who decides?
Yeah,
Who
exactly.
decides which books are valuable in any cultural context?
Mm.
It's like, who decides which music is valuable
Yeah,
in
yeah.
any context? And so those
That's a
decisions are made quite removed from the people who are going to be reading those books. And
yeah,
this is
yeah.
probably a discussion many people are having. And I've just looked at the time. I've had you talking for a while, Rach. We've
I
been
was
talking
going to say
for a
we
while.
could talk for a long time, but have we discussed? Hopefully, we're not going off on too many tangents for people, and that you found this interesting.
I love a tangent though. You just never know where a tangent will take you. But we will have more to talk about next time, of course. So, but for this time, should we wrap it up? Episode
Yeah.
3?
I think so. But let us know if you want us to talk about anything, or what your gateway authors were.
I think we can call you a gateway drug. Rach, I've got no
Yeah,
problems calling
gateway
you.
drug. Love
See you
it.
next time.
Bye.